Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News Weekend. October 4th was the National Day of Action for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. And people came out from across the country. We start in Ottawa with Annette Francis.
The morning began with a special delivery to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's mailing office. Pamela Hart made the trip from Toronto to drop off 4,000 cover pages of missing or murdered Indigenous women and girls. She says the momentum from the National Inquiry for Missing or Murdered Indigenous Women has fizzled out.
So we're here today to try and remind the government here in Ottawa that they have a responsibility, that there is a call to justice for each and every Canadian across Turtle Island.
And later those words were echoed across the lawn of Parliament Hill. Bridget Tolley is the organizer of today's event. After her mother's death, she founded the organization Families of Sisters in Spirit as an advocacy group for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
17 years. We've been on the Hill now, calling for change, calling for justice. 17 years later, we're still here calling for the same thing.
A few hundred people, including family members, senators, and MPs, gathered to share their support to families and listen to their calls for action. Among them was Megan Gallagher's family. She went missing 2 years ago in Saskatoon. Her dad, Brian, shared a poem called Megan, Where Are You?
I sent you a text. You say your phone is dead. Baby girl, where are you? People are asking about you.
With developments still fresh, he commended the families for their efforts to continue coming out.
But I just wanted to make a quick remark on your 17 years and what you've been doing is having an impact because the words are getting out there. And I would like to take a second to commend the Saskatoon Police Services and all that they've done, because as of on the weekend, human remains have been found for our daughter. And it's been because of their hard work. And I think if we're looking for models to start to build new relationships, they might be something that you could check out.
Megan's older sister, Lindsay Bishop, is walking across Canada to bring awareness to the issue. She began in Victoria last February and plans to be in Newfoundland by December.
Any type of visibility is important to keep people talking and to keep the word out there to, how do I say this, to help stop the atrocities that are happening across Turtle Island to our missing and murdered.
Grandparents, please. We need your help. Please take care of our baby girl. Merci. Thank you.
The families are hopeful to see more action by next year's annual event. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Families in British Columbia drew attention to what they call police mishandling of their loved ones' cases. As APTN's Sarah Connors reports, families and their supporters want better accountability from police when it comes to cases of missing and murdered.
September 29th would have been Tatiana Harris's 21st birthday. But on May 3rd, the 20-year-old Cree and Métis woman was reported missing. Her body was discovered the day before, on May 2nd, on this yacht in Richmond. But her identity wasn't confirmed as the woman on the yacht until 3 months later.
The police handling of Tatiana's case came with many flaws.
That's why her mother, Natasha Harrison, and other families are speaking out.
The list of neglect continues. The communication with law enforcement and to the family and the community has come to a halt.
In honor of Sisters in Spirit, Amnesty International Canada held a virtual press conference for families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Family members shared their experience of police negligence and mismanagement in the investigations of their loved ones. Brenda Wilson's 16-year-old sister Ramona Wilson disappeared in 1994 in Smithers. Her body was found by the Smithers Airport in 1995. Wilson says she's frustrated more hasn't been done.
And when are we going to have answers? When is there going to be accountability?
The Union of British Columbia Indian Chiefs says more services and supports are needed for family members, as well as a change in policing.
We don't need police apathy. We need police taking more action and taking these cases more seriously.
In a statement to APTN, BC RCMP said it was committed to solving the cases, stating, "We are learning from our past mistakes and are working hard to overcome historical interactions that have left prolonged feelings of being dismissed." The Vancouver Police Department gave a statement defending its investigations, saying in part that provincial policing standards dictate how police agencies conduct missing persons investigations, and it consistently solves more than 99% of missing persons cases. As for Natasha Harrison, she hopes by raising awareness, police will take cases like her daughter's more seriously.
Uphold the law, and I hope we can reach a point in our justice system where cases like these get solved instead of brushed under the rug because one person decides a human being doesn't deserve a proper investigation.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News.
And in Yellowknife, the message was clear. Indigenous women and girls, gender diverse, two-spirit and transgender people deserve safety and equality. It was an emotional day in Denendeh as families, elders, advocates, leaders, and police officers honored MMIWG 2S. It was also a time of hope and healing as participants offered prayers and marched from Dilo to downtown Yellowknife. The day-long programming also included families who have lost loved ones, a candlelight vigil, and a survivor sharing circle and feast. The goal is to continue pressing the territorial government to take actions to reduce the rates of violence against Indigenous peoples.
I think it's important that I march for them because, I want to support them any way I can. And this way it brings awareness to these type of things. There's a lot of violence towards Aboriginal people, especially towards Aboriginal women and two-spirited. So that's what I'm here to do.
A camp set up to protest a variety of issues, including COVID-19 restrictions, on the north lawn of the Manitoba Legislative Building in Winnipeg is no more. Winnipeg police and conservation officers took down 2 teepees and stopped the construction of a third. 12 people have been arrested so far, leading to several charges. Police say that weapons were found at the site, but camp members say there were axes to chop wood. The Northside camp was notably controversial for protesting against COVID-19 restrictions and conflict in the Middle East, among other issues. An Eastside camp was left intact as it was set up in response to the discovery of suspected unmarked graves at Kamloops. They hope to stay and continue to burn a sacred fire until all residential school sites are searched. The police say there is no enforcement action planned, but that may change.
There's no enforcement action plan, but like I said, at any moment we could be forced into taking action to preserve public safety. So we are trying to let a peaceful resolution evolve out of this.
Time to step aside for a quick break, but stick around. There's much more to come. Welcome back. The long regulatory road for Nunavut's Baffinland iron ore mine is nearing an end, with a decision that means at least a temporary reprieve for the over 1,100 jobs the North Baffin Island mine has created. Our Kent Driscoll joins us from Iqaluit. Kent, how did we get here and what's still yet to come?
Thanks. Now, first let's start with how we got here. The Baffinland iron ore mine is located in northeastern Baffin Island, in between the communities of Pond Inlet and Arctic Bay. They're currently cleared to mine just over 4 million tons of iron ore annually. They want to mine 12 million tons a year. And yesterday, they received approval from the Department of Northern Affairs to mine 6 million tons of iron ore annually. Now, the way Nunavut's land use regime works, the Nunavut Impact Review Board makes a recommendation to the feds, Northern Affairs. That's all it is, a recommendation. It's up to the Federal Department of Northern Affairs to accept or reject those recommendations. Yesterday's announcement of the temporary increase to $6 million, it's one of two decisions about the future of the mine that are currently on the desk of Northern Affairs Minister Dan Vandell. The Impact Review Board recommended in favor of the increase to $6 million, but recommended against the increase to 12 million tons a year. Vandell's office has indicated that a decision on the 12 million should be coming in about a month. Now, Baffinland had already sent out termination notices to over 1,100 employees, but the increase to 6 million tons means they're not going through with it. Those jobs are safe for now. In a written statement, a Baffinland spokesperson wrote, "The application for our Phase 2 expansion is still with the minister, and we expect to receive his decision within the coming months. Through extensive consultation with our stakeholders, we believe we have put forward a strong application that addresses Inuit concerns." That Phase 2 he's talking about, that's the proposed 12 million tons annually that they're hoping to get. Now, this time, Northern Affairs held up the decision of the Nunavut Impact Review Board. In a month, we'll get to see if they continue to follow the agency's lead or decide to give the mine the quota that they're asking for. Back to you in Winnipeg.
Thanks, Kent. Homelessness and addictions are growing issues throughout the country. In Alberta, cities and smaller communities are bracing for even greater housing shortages and overdoses. This past weekend, the Alberta government announced major funding to help combat homelessness and addictions in the province. APTN's Chris Stewart has those details.
$187 million over 2 years was announced on Saturday by outgoing Alberta Premier Jason Kenney. $63 million will be spent to fight homelessness in areas across Alberta that need it most, says Kenney.
To expand the number of shelter spaces, especially for the winter months, in priority communities like Edmonton, Wetaskiwin, Lethbridge, and rural communities where there's an urgent and unmet need.
The Premier admits not enough has been done to help those who have no place to live or addicted.
First responsibility of government is to ensure public safety. And let's be honest, governments have not risen to that challenge adequately here in Edmonton, Chinatown.
$124 million over 2 years will help expand addiction recovery in Edmonton and Calgary, where $65 million will be spent. Provincially run shelters will be run 24/7.
The status quo was not helping people. In many cases, it was enabling people who were struggling in the depths of the illness of addiction to continue to use and abuse toxic, deadly poisons like fentanyl.
Edmonton Police Service Chief Dale McPhee applauds the addition of recovery units in all provincial jails.
I think it's yet to be determined what that looks like and where that is. But the fact that we're putting safety and wellness in the whole perspective and putting it in a health domain is going to be a game changer.
For those to kick in.
Hope Mission Manager of Homeless Programs says he is thankful for the additional supports.
I think having that additional support, both on an emergency basis to have additional shelter spaces, available and funding for that, but then also to be focusing on a continuum of care, I think was necessary, and I'm glad there was action taken.
He told APTN that the Hope Shelter was at 100% capacity during the summer and was worried about the upcoming winter.
You have to take people in a situation in the winter where you might not have the staffing resources that you need, or to operate safely and to support people as with whatever they're needing at that time. So without the funding, I think we would have been in a tough spot for sure.
The Alberta government says that as of January, over 6,400 Albertans are experiencing homelessness. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
Time for one more quick break, but stick around. There's more to come. Welcome back. Although families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls have made their way home from rallies across the country, their pleas for action continue to echo in the halls of Parliament. Here's some of an exchange earlier this week during question period.
Yesterday, Indigenous families, communities across Turtle Island grieved and demanded answers for their missing loved ones. Families have been calling for justice and urgent action from this government. Instead of doing everything they can to ensure no more lives are lost, the Liberals have been doing the bare minimum. They have spent only a fraction of the funding they promised for violence prevention initiatives and have barely implemented the calls for justice from the MMIWG report. The Liberals have been in power now 7 years. When will they finally start delivering the justice Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit folks deserve?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our hearts remain with survivors and families of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQI+ people. Addressing this ongoing violence requires living up to our goals as a country and living up to all the calls for justice. We're taking a whole-of-government approach supported by an over $2 billion investment in concrete measures to keep people safe and close to $2 billion investment to support Indigenous housing needs. We understand that there is always more to do, and we will continue to work urgently on it alongside Indigenous peoples.
A documentary covering a decades-long Indigenous land rights battle will be making its BC premiere at the Vancouver International Film Festival this week. Klabona Keepers follows the matriarch-led fight to protect headwaters in Tahltan territory in northern BC. APTN's Lee Wilson has more.
Klabona Keepers is the name of the matriarch group that fought to protect the Klabona headwaters against mining and natural gas companies starting in 2004. The headwaters, located in Tahltan territory, are where 4 salmon-bearing rivers form, including the Skeena and the Nass rivers. Rhoda Kwok is a spokesperson for the group and a producer of the documentary. She says those rivers are their livelihood.
Also really fighting for our livelihood. Japan is our livelihood. That's where we get our winter's meat. That's where we get our medicinal plants. That's where we take our youth to teach them our ways.
Directed by Tomo Campos and Jasper Snow Rosen, who used 15 years of footage which showed the group's standoffs with police and industry. Kwok's son, Robert Jocasta, says he grew up in the blockades. He hopes their group's successful fight to protect their headwaters against natural resource extraction inspires those who watch their story.
Because it's Crown land, so they force their way in. They force their way in and take our minerals out of our land without even having consent. This is we're one of the first times a top 3 company in the world was sent on their way and they weren't able to exploit land from Indigenous people. And I just want to get that across, just people to understand just how incredible that is. Just what a feat we were able to accomplish over those many years.
All proceeds from the film will go to youth programming at Klabona Headwaters. Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Kitimat.
Meanwhile, a documentary about one man's residential school experience premiered in Winnipeg recently. Bimi Batuin, Where I Ran, shares the story of Charlie Bittern's run for his life. Sav Jonesa met with him and director Erica Daniels to learn more.
An 80-kilometer run during a blizzard sounds impossible, but young Charlie Bittern had no other choice.
It's either do or die. That's what it was in residential school. Either do or die.
Charlie Bittern is a survivor of Birtle Residential School in Manitoba, and his experience there is now preserved in film.
I feel relieved by sharing my story because now people will know, and even my family never knew what happened to me till tonight. First time they're going to see.
Filmmaker Erica Daniels has brought Bittern's story of perseverance to the masses.
Bimi Batuin, Where I Ran is a short doc based on Charlie Bittern's experience of when he was in Birtle Residential School and he was forced to run 80 kilometers throughout the night of one of Manitoba's brutal blizzards in 1967, and so this story kind of shares that particular experience and how that sort of affected him in his life.
The short film premiered at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights in Winnipeg. Musicians opened for the film to a full house.
There's no life,
luck has all run cold.
Bittrin says sharing his story was a long time in the making.
My late dad used to tell me, he says, when you're young, when you get hurt, he says, and for years you don't feel a hurt, but as you grow older, he says, the wound, the hurt will come back. And that's what happened to me as a young teenager. And right now as I'm walking here going west, my memory is just flashing back. And as I walk here, I'm starting to feel light. Like I'm not one bit tired. I feel like running.
As these difficult conversations gain public acknowledgement, Daniels believes that the children who never made it home are to thank.
What happened in June of 2021, where they discovered, the children, it really shook people, and it finally gave us that I feel like those children are giving us that opportunity to finally be heard. There's such a purpose to that and how that came about, and it's really important that we're able to share these stories and for people to hear and listen. It's that time now that we move forward.
The film also serves as a tool for education.
I can't wait for people to see it because it will touch many, many lives across Canada, and I really hope that this will be an opportunity for Canadians to reflect and to sort of do their part in learning these stories and listening to these stories and sharing them, because that's the way that we have to move forward is hearing that truth in order for us to heal and to move on to reconciliation.
Bittrin has a message to send for those who may relate to his experience or are looking to amplify the voices of survivors.
A lot of survivors have passed on and buried with what they experienced. They never shared to nobody. And I said, us survivors that are alive should share the stories they went through. And a lot of those stories are very hard to talk about, but it's time they come and share like what I did.
Sab Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Looks good. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this weekend. For more on anything you've seen here and much more, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.